Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the December 6, 2022 Post Falls City Council meeting. Rhiannon, thanks for filling in for Shannon tonight. Please note that all council members are present. We do not have any ceremonies or appointments or announcements tonight. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
We have none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict? Would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the November 15th, 2022 City Council meeting. Item B is minutes from the November 22nd, 2022 Special City Council meeting. Item C is payables November 8th through November 28th, 2022. Item D is Hydrilla Estates Master Development Agreement. Item E is frontage improvement waiver request for 513 West 14th Avenue. Item F is disposal of a 2013 John Deere mulching mower by the Parks Department. Item G is a revised Schedule 1 agreement with Gunderson Consulting and Communications Site Services. Item H is cash and investment report for September 2022. And item I is Jacqueline Highway 41 project construction improvement agreement.
I do have one question. Probably goes to Jason. Under payables, under mayor and council, there's a line item for chip sealing, asphalt. Should that not be under streets, or? I'll look at that too. Would you please? It's coded on, it's charged in the mayor and council, which I thought was kind of strange.
Getting your driveway chip sealed?
Yeah.
No, that was a joke, right?
Yes, it was a joke.
Yes, it's a joke.
Yeah, so if you could check and then recode that, appreciate it, Jason. Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the consent calendar as presented with a double check on the coding for the chip sealing.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Shove.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item is public hearings, and tonight we do have one public hearing, and it's an update to the fee resolution. Fiscal year 2023. Open the public hearing.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. There's an updated fee resolution in your packet that I would proposing. We first started off with East Green Acres, Ross Point. Both of them, Ross Point and East Green Acres, do shut off on the city's behalf. And in the past, our city shut-off fee is $35. We currently pay that to East Green Acres, and we paid it to Ross Point, but Ross Point wanted to up that from their $35 to what they charge their customers, $50. So in order for us to reimburse them the $50 for shutoffs, that has to be in our fee schedule. So that's where we first started with the bringing back a fee schedule update. And then the second one is there was a issue with the fire and EMS on hotels. It's per square foot, and so that's reflected in the fee resolution as well. And then, of course, when I routed the fee resolution, Parks had a few changes to their fee schedule as well. So everything in there I highlighted in yellow, so if there was any question, it was put the before and the after so you could see what it was going to.
We have any questions of Jason? Anyone wishing to testify?
Nope.
I will close the public hearing. Council, how would you like to act? Is that coming up at an ordinance later, or is that?
Yeah, I just need a motion for a resolution to come back to the next
Resolution.
council, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
I think that's the fastest public hearing ever.
That's great. Unfinished business, returning ordinances and resolutions. We do have one ordinance, the Hydrilla Estates Zone Change.
I would move to place the ordinance Hydrilla Estates Zone Change to R1 on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion seconds, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for a change in zoning classification
for the land described in Section 1 of this ordinance from single-family residential suburban R1S to single-family residential R1, providing for amendment of the official zoning map to reflect the change, providing that all prior zones applicable to lands described in Section 1 are hereby superseded, and providing an effective date.
I move to approve the ordinance Hydrilla Estates zone change to R1 and to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is the Tertiary Treatment Upgrade Amendment 7 to the Professional Service Agreement with JUB.
Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Andrew Arbini, Projects Division Manager. My presentation tonight are two consultant amendments to their agreements for the Tertiary Improvements Project. So this is a project that you are quite familiar with. We've presented on this over the last 2 years that it's been in construction, over the last year and a half with a more focused update on the delays and challenges in construction. With that, I'll just jump into my slides and provide a quick summary. So construction will not be completed as the original schedule stated. There have been some changes to the contracts and then the compliance schedule. So recently, staff presented to council on the permit compliance update. We have revised the deadline for that. And I'll speak a little bit about that on the next couple slides. And on the contract amendments themselves, specifically bringing JUB and Panhandle Area Council PACS amendments tonight to council. At the end of my presentation, I'll talk a little bit about the next steps and what we anticipate here in the near future. Our project goals remain the same as they have. Item number 1, satisfy the NIPD's permit compliance schedule. As I mentioned previously, that has been addressed. Primarily, John and Craig have both led that effort in the last year. Once we realized we would not make our existing project completion date, they began discussions with DEQ to negotiate that extension. So a summary of that is that it changed the construction completion deadline to November 30th of 2023, so it adds a whole nother year. And then it also adjusts the subsequent deadlines behind that. Overall, this avoids a violation of the IPD's permit, and it does keep the existing permit in effect for all the other elements. This is a illustrative representation of the adjustment. So the bottom 3 boxes in red, where the writing is in red, those are the updated dates, with construction being the November 23, and then final completion meeting those new permit requirements occurring in December 1st, 2025. So again, John and Craig have led that effort over the last year in addressing that with DEQ. So that brings me to tonight's items, both B and C on the agenda. This is for JUB and with PAC. This adjusts their contracts based on the information we're currently receiving from the contractor in the additional time it'll take to complete the project. Few of the main impacts in the project right now kind of boiled this down to 3. We have global supply chain impacts, so delivery of just basic materials and equipment. You could also put labor challenges in that category as well. The other item is somewhat related, but specifically on the generators and electrical components themselves. So we added generator equipment in change order 36, which altered the power feed into the plant. That right now is driving a lot of the delays. The final item, we have had some workmanship items occurring mainly at the membrane building, and that pertains to the masonry and the CMU. We are working through resolution on that. That building does remain critical path to install the filtration equipment. However, that item is largely eclipsed by the first 2 bullet points, as those are the primary components that are driving the project schedule. To summarize where we are formally and both informally, this is a slide that we've used previously, and I've updated it with the current information. So formally, our contract started September of 2020. We've added 23 days through change orders for the project. So that updated substantial completion was October 27th of this year. We have revised the DEQ deadline to November of next year, so that has been finalized. Informally, we've been working through a schedule revision with the contractor, and the most recent information we have is a late summer completion of 23. That is a 308 additional days to the project. We are in negotiations and discussions with the contractor, and anticipate that we would have a change to the contract at some point in the near future. Tonight's amendments were developed based on this most current information that we have. So, laying that groundwork, the request tonight is an amendment. The first one is amendment with JUB. This is Amendment 7. The first 6 amendments total the $7.7 million. So, an example of one of those amendments, we had an agreement for SCADA services. So that ties in all of the individual components of the plant into an operational interface so that the operators can see at any time how things are operating. So just that being an example of one of the amendments that we've had in this project. Amendment 7 includes the services needed to extend out construction management, observation, supporting services through the remainder of the project based on that current schedule information we're receiving. I will add that this is our amendment with JUB. This also includes their subconsultants. So, for instance, the electrical engineer, include other subconsultants underneath them. The total revised contract would be that bottom line there. And we are requesting a 2% contingency with this amendment. The second amendment is with Panhandle Area Council. So as part of our loan agreement, we are required to include wage compliance with this contract. So PAC is providing the wage compliance services. Their initial contract was $58,000. Based on the schedule information, they anticipate the services to continue through the project would be $26,194, and we are asking for a 10% contingency as well. So the updated contract total is at the bottom there. One other quick item of note, we have one other notable contract. The city has a contract with special inspections firm providing inspections for the project. That was taken to council previously, late summer. At that time, we were near the end of their contract, and we did make a request for additional services. So to date, they are tracking with the budget that they have remaining to complete the remaining work. So tonight, this just includes JUB and PAC. So talking through revenue sources. So presented the increase to the budget, where are we proposing to fund this? The city received federal funds, the ARPA dollars. Staff had allocated $1 million of that towards wastewater projects. So at the time, anticipating that there would be a need in our wastewater, there would be a need for those funds. So we are proposing to partially fund that increase with this $1 million. The remaining balance of that would come from cap fees and then the replacement funds. So a note that I've included there is that in FY22, the city exceeded the projections for cap fees by $600,000. So between the federal funds and the excess cap fees, that would fund the majority of this increase to the budget. Additionally, looking at specifically the cap fees and the replacement fund, looking at our financial strategy from the 2013 master plan, this is in line with that overall strategy. So there are funds available, and this does match and is in line with that. I will say that we have had some discussion internally, so this information came from some joint effort with city staff to compile this information here. So all that said, we do not anticipate any changes or any impacts to other projects by utilizing these proposed funds. So next steps, approval tonight provides the services needed, the additional services needed to complete the project based on the extension of time. So this keeps JUB and PAC providing the services that they have been, the construction management, wage compliance, through the remainder of the project. We anticipate an adjustment to the contractor's contract sometime in the near future. Again, we're currently negotiating that and anticipate an update likely in the beginning of the year. We have been doing regular project updates, and I anticipate we would have another one early next year as well. Likely anticipate a lot of things happening in the next few months and getting buildings enclosed and some substantial updates to bring to council. Normally I would go to questions at this point, but this is a table we've included previously, and I added the last 2 years. So this just updates the project splits, where the amounts are coming from for each fund. So this is just kind of a high-level summary. I can certainly come back to this, but just want to provide that updated information. And with that, I will go to questions. And
Andrew, I have two.
yes.
$1,700,000 for an additional 308 days worth of contract. Is that in line? I'm not sure what all that entails, but that sounds like a significantly large number for a 308-day extension.
Yes. So this is not an insignificant increase to the project, to the original contract. As I mentioned, this is not just construction management services with JUB. This does include several sub-consultants. There's several involved in that. I will also say that in development of this amendment, it took into account the last 2 years of historical information in this project. So the additional time spent on various items. An example being, contractor has the ability to submit on multiple products, let's say an adhesive, and they could submit on one adhesive. Usually we see one submittal. We've seen 4 submittals. It has provided a benefit because of the supply chain issues that we've had, and they weren't able to find the one they wanted to use, so they went to another and they had it already approved. But in that process, it's created additional time spent to review each one of those submittals. So where I'm going with that, JUB was able to use that information over the last couple of years in developing, based on what effort has gone into the project to date, what would it look like to extend that out, this 300 days. So based on that, that's where that number is derived, and that seems to be in line with what we've seen and what was presented to us.
Well, again, I know we've got a good working relationship with JUB, but it just seems like an extreme number. I mean, that gives me pause, and I know you guys are on top of it, but know that number struck a chord with myself and probably some of the council members as well, because that's, extend the contract for a year and have another $1.7 million in consultants and engineering fees is somewhat surprising to me. Second question is, I would like a definition, nutshell of excess capacity fees received, because we just increased our capacity fees. So my question, and maybe it's for you, John, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I apologize if I'm doing so, but if we had excess, why do we, I know we had a projected increase, but it just seems like they're somewhat contradictory.
John Beecham.
John Beecham, Public Works Director. I'll take the credit for the math, whether it's good math or bad math. That was my number. That was simply looking at the budget for FY22, for the fiscal year we just closed out. So every year we have a projection in there for how many cap fees based on how much gets built. and we budget conservatively, we expect, if we budget the opposite of conservatively, we end up with a shortfall in revenue. So based on those conservative budget estimates, the cap fees came in above those. That's a reflection of both increasing the fees, like you said, but also just the kind of almost record amount of growth we had in the last year. So those funds are put right into the capital projects fund for projects like this. And the model, the financial model that we refer back to when we're working on this sort of thing has a pretty even amount of cap fees that come in year over year, and it's a pretty conservative estimate too. So what I was trying to say with that 600,000 in excess is that was not projected in the budget, wasn't projected in the financial model. In a perfect world, you could use that towards some future project that would then decrease future rates or something like that, but that project's not identified yet. We haven't done the modeling to see that. It's really, in this case, being used for cost overruns.
Well, I appreciate that explanation. And that would be my next question. You addressed it, is will that cause us an issue in the future? Because I know we collect these cap fees in order to provide for future capacity. And if, in fact, we're using some of those funds now that maybe was not anticipated, do you think we're going to be all right as we move forward? Again, I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize.
You are putting me on the spot. I don't,
I won't hold
and
your feet to the fire.
that is okay. This is a perfect segue to tell you about a different project we're working on, which is an update to that financial plan. So we're mid-project on an update to the water reclamation facility plan that looks at all the projects out 20 years, looks at where we are with finances today, where we would project going with finances over those 20 years, and make sure we have a plan in place to get there. I don't think, I don't see a substantial issue arising in the future. We're working on a $47 million project. The 600,000 is, it's a substantial increase in dollars. It's not a substantial increase in price compared to that project, if that makes sense.
Well, and again, just to reiterate, I've got confidence in yourself and Andrew and Craig, and you guys have done a great job managing a very difficult project. But I just wanted to make sure when I see excess cap fees, wait a minute, what's excess? Number one, and number two, I just wanted to be sure that you folks are 100% comfortable with the increase in the contract amount for JV. So thanks for that.
If I could add on to what Andrew said on that question, we are still right at about 20% of the project value for the entire engineering services contract. So from design through construction, that's been about 20%, which is pretty typical for a wastewater project. We're not in excess of that benchmark. And this project, like Andrew said, has been substantially more taxing on the engineers just because there's a lot more things coming at them. What do you think about cost escalation?
Sure.
Well, we don't talk about that in a normal, 3 years ago, that wasn't an issue we discussed. It has been in this project.
Good. Well, again, thank you for your information, and I again apologize. I should have probably reached out to you earlier today, and I forgot to, so I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It was a great explanation. Thank you. Joe?
I'm going to pile on a little bit to what the mayor said too. The question I had is, a lot of the reason for the extension of the contract is supply chain issues, labor shortage. We've got generators that are late. So the oversimplified, probably ignorant assumption is that there's a lot of waiting around. Is JUB and their sub-consultants charging us to wait for the generators to show up? I guess that's the part that's kind of confusing me.
I'll take a stab at it since I'm here, but Andrew will probably correct me. There's not a lot of waiting around. There is a lot of working around, if I can. So if you don't have piece A that you need for the project today, you're going to go work on something else, and that disrupts the normal flow of everything. So you have to go make sure it's okay with everybody if you work on that second piece, and then you're going to come back to the first piece. But now there's a more complicated way that gets built, so you've got to look at it twice. And it's a less efficient way to build things because you don't have the thing you wanted when you wanted it. You're waiting for that. So it's not waiting around, it's working around is how I'd say it.
And I'll tag on to that. I'll agree with the working around, but there's also a lot of negotiating that our staff and JUB do with the contractors when it comes to some of the pricing that they're seeing the overpricing on. And so they ask us for an additional $75,000, for example, and John and his team and Andrew and Jackson will get together and review that, but they're talking to JUB, who's helping mitigate between the two to say, no, we're not gonna pay that additional cost. Here's what our offer will be, so.
Okay. Any questions?
I'm good.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We would need a motion. Do you want to take them separately?
Yeah, separately would be good.
I would move to approve the tertiary treatment upgrade amendment 7 to the professional services agreement with JUB engineers.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy. Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you.
I would move to approve the tertiary treatment upgrade Panhandle Area Council request for increase of contract amount.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Roll call, please.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. And just so you know, Craig and Andrew and John, we see you guys almost every meeting because of this huge project and all the obstacles that you're dealing with, and I do appreciate your efforts and your willingness to get this project moved to completion. And don't take any offense, but I'm looking forward to the day that we don't see it every meeting. Next item up, new business, pursuit of ordinance to maintain protection of sensitive resource aquifer.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Craig Bornpole, Utilities Manager for the city. Before I get started, I'll say that we have some representatives from Panhandle Health District here, and if we get into any of the topics, they'd be better positioned to provide insight on. I'll probably defer to them to come up and give some of that. But here before you tonight, I see this as introducing a topic for likely future consideration. Give you some of the background of the topic, give us a chance to talk about any questions, concerns that you might see, and then, like I said, for likely future consideration. Critical materials, might as well start with a definition while we're here. I think of it as anything that might be a contaminant were it to get into our drinking water system. So the critical materials program, as administered right now, looks at storage of any of those contaminants, making sure that it's done appropriately. Overview of the discussion. I'll talk about what we're considering, the what's, the whys, other considerations, and at that end, look for some direction from you on if you think a critical materials ordinance would be worth bringing back for consideration. So what we're considering. Right now, the critical materials program is a set of rules that's administered by the Panhandle Health District. And what we're considering is taking those rules and matching it to our style guide for Post Falls ordinances. So the rules are existing, they're in force, but yeah, we're looking at converting those to a Post Falls ordinance. That ordinance would provide for continuation of existing special protections for the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer. Consideration of that ordinance would be through the normal process at a future date. So not looking for, yes, we want to approve an ordinance right now, obviously. Just introducing the topic. Why we are considering this. To put it as succinctly as I can, those rules that are currently protecting our sensitive resource aquifer are in a temporary status with the state, and that is expected to expire at the end of the next legislative session. So with that being the case, city staff and health district staff met to discuss options. I talked with administration of is this worth bringing up to the next level, and they thought a forum like this, presenting to council and getting your take would be a good next step, rather than another alternative was we just go ahead and undertake that effort to convert the rules to ordinance and present it that way. We thought we would introduce the topic first before going through that effort. Make sure you thought that effort was worthy endeavor. An ordinance would support a local solution to a local problem. As I was developing these slides, I said ordinance solves a local problem. It wouldn't solve it, but it would support it. And we can impact that for our area, for the city, but not over all of the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer. So in looking at this, why is it important to Post Falls? Why would we be considering converting a state rule to a city ordinance? Quite frankly, this is a schematic of our drinking water system, and we operate a pretty simplistic system where we pump store, and distribute. There is no treatment required in our system right now. We are pumping from the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. I should have had an overall graphic of just how expansive the aquifer is. Hopefully, we've all lived here long enough, we know how special it is. So our system right now, like I said, we're drawing from the aquifer, store, and distribute. There's no treatment needed. So the rules that are currently existing are providing protections of that aquifer. I see that as providing protections of our drinking water source. And so I think the Post Falls citizens are getting a direct benefit by those protections and would benefit from continuation of those protections. The opposite, I think, would also be true. If those protections go away, I think we could see direct harm to the citizens, where we would have to install potentially costly treatment at each of our sources to treat for a contaminant that would get in there. So we've basically been reaping the benefits of rules administered by another agency and to the benefit of our users. Those protections may be going away, and that's why I think it's important. So some other considerations on is it worth converting state rule to a city ordinance. As I said, the current rules are administered by the Panhandle Health District and their staff, and that would continue. So there wouldn't be an increase of requirements on city staff if we were to do this. Similarly, it's funded by a different program administered by the Aquifer Protection District, and that would continue as well. There wouldn't be any city resources to administer the program. We're not alone in this. There's other governing bodies who are looking at converting some of the other rules. The Kootenai County, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the 5-acre rule, but the 5-acre rule basically limits the density of septic systems over the aquifer. And Kootenai County took the state rules and converted that to county ordinances. So that 5-acre rule is now at the county level. So yeah, we're not alone in looking at this process of taking their rules and adapting it for our purposes. So a quick recap. Looking at converting what are existing Idaho state rules into a city ordinance, future consideration. Why those rules are in temporary status. When I say that, I don't want to think that they're like new rules. These are rules that have been in place for decades now. Just where they are right now is in a temporary status expected to expire. I think the protections benefit Post Falls water users, City of Post Falls, and again, these aren't new rules. These are existing ongoing rules. Our businesses are used to operating under them, and we're not alone. So we're to questions and input. What I have up here is just kind of an overview. It's hard to see the exact red line, but we've worked with Panhandle Health District and coordinated with them on several things. This shows wells that they have historically or are currently monitoring for contaminants. Some of these wells are our drinking water wells. And we work with them to get that sampling done, make sure everything is still looking good. So we have a relationship with them, but I thought that was kind of a fun graphic. I'm going to look to Eric to see if there's any big points that... Yeah, I'm going to bring up Eric Kettner. He's with Panhandle Health District.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The Health District has been involved in aquifer protection since 1977 is when we first initiated rules. And frankly, I think Craig articulated it very well that we talk about the aquifer, but frankly what we're talking about the drinking water source for the entire area. What brings about, and I greatly appreciate Craig for bringing this forward, why this is important now is if you can recall, during the legislative session of 2019, the legislature did not move all of the administrative rules forward, so they all expired. We spent 3 years trying to get the rules reauthorized. It's a fairly onerous process. We have to get approval through the Senate committee, the House committee, and then concurrent resolution of the legislature. We had some success in each of those areas, but we were never able to complete it entirely. And the message that we got from the legislature was that this is a local issue, why are you bringing it to the state? And if I can be candid, one of the things that I'll share is that the committees that we spoke in front of, in many cases you had 2, 3 representatives of North Idaho that actually knew that this was an issue. Many others were from southern Idaho, and it wasn't really a significant concern for them. So after 3 years of trying to get the rules reauthorized, we hit a significant speed bump where there was House Bill 316. We were deemed not to be a state agency. We were essentially kicked out of the omnibus rulemaking process in December, which was pretty much at the 11th hour. And based on our 3 years of experience, we do not believe that we would be successful unilaterally trying to go forward to the legislature and get the rules passed. So our current effort is really to work with the local municipalities, work with Kootenai County, and try to take what is a local issue and get local ordinance and continue those same protections that the community has benefited from, over the past 4 decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So Craig, if council opts to move forward with this, you'd bring back a proposed ordinance in, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I wanted to have this conversation before we put that effort in. The nice thing is the rules are existing, so I don't think it's a real heavy lift to convert those to what an ordinance would look like, but we thought having this conversation before putting that effort to this would be worth it, and then bring back that ordinance.
Council, comments? Carrie?
Yeah, just a clarification, the appropriation that you're talking about that it pays for this, I believe I think it's $5.75 on the tax bill that I just saw on that special side. So $5.75 is what everyone pays annually. And I believe Bob Nonini was in the legislature 10, 12 years ago when that went through. I used to serve on the Aquifer Protection District Board, but yeah, small price to pay to have some of the best drinking water that comes out of a tap anywhere.
And that funds more than just this, actually, so, yeah.
Any other comments?
Just make sure I understand. So for all practical purposes, nothing changes, right?
For all practical purposes, nothing changes, yeah. I see this as analogous to our pretreatment program. So we have ordinances that allow us to go look at dischargers to the wastewater system to make sure they're not sending us anything that we can't treat. And this is kind of similar on the drinking water side. I might look to Warren just to make sure that we have that ability to delegate authority for administration to another entity as part of that ordinance, but that's my understanding.
We should be able to do it. We can figure out a lot of things.
Well, an ounce of prevention is definitely worth a pound of cure, so I think it's the best option for sure.
Entertain a motion.
So how do we structure this motion?
Ask them to bring back an ordinance, is that correct?
Yeah, just a motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance and bring it back would be sufficient.
So moved.
Second.
I love the way you asked that question. Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Schob.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you. Thank you, Craig. Thank you very much. Citizens' comments. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues that are not on the agenda. If anyone wishes to testify, come forward. Seeing none. Administrative staff reports.
We have none tonight, sir.
Wow, love it. Mayor and council comments. I don't look at social media much. Don't really care for Facebook and all that stuff. But I did have to look at the city's posts on streets department snow removal. And there are always those that are going to complain. I understand that. And if they've got a concern, please reach out, touch base with city, and let us know what the concerns are. But for all the negative, comments that I did read, I probably saw 4 or 5 positive comments, and I think that says a lot. I know the streets department has put in a lot of time and effort in creating a plan and keeping people updated. Of course, keep people updated. Sometimes that just keeps them updated on their willingness to complain as well, and I understand that. But again, I think that I talked with John earlier today. We had the first snowfall. We had a crew on throughout the night until 6 a.m. We had crews started the next day at 6 a.m., worked till 6 p.m., and they continued to do that until the entire city was plowed. So, there are times when streets will be missed, et cetera, and I'd say call in and let staff know, because no one's perfect, and we'll do our best to get it fixed. But thanks, please pass that on. Thank you to the people that are out there while we're at home in the warmth of our own home and we're sleeping, and they're out getting the streets plowed and facing the obstacles of cars in the way, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, I do appreciate the efforts that they've made. Second thing I'd like to say is we lost a very good gentleman, a true gentleman's gentleman, Ron Oren, who passed away the last, I don't know if it was yesterday or day before. Ron had some very significant health issues. But if you knew Ron Oren, you knew a gentleman, and he was a banker like I was, but he was in it a lot longer than I was. But there was no finer gentleman or finer banker than Ron Oren. So I just ask you to keep his family in your thoughts and prayers, because that's a tough loss. And you know, Ron wasn't a young chicken, but boy, I tell you what, he was active until the end. So he was a model for all of us. So. And then I guess I'd also say continue to drive safe as we see additional snow approaching. We do live in North Idaho. Roads will be slick. Carrie.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Short Green Company and the beautiful lighting display at the Post Falls Police Department. So if you drive down Polston Avenue, it's kind of off the beaten path there. But it is just gorgeous. And this is 6th year, I believe, that company has donated the labor and the lights and all of that. And I was hearing some police officers, some of the patrol people, talking about what a difference it makes. You're working, you're in the middle of the night, whenever, but anyways, what a boost, a bit of holiday cheer that is for the men and women who are out protecting and serving 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, that their home is all lit up for the holidays. And it's just beautiful. So thank you to them for doing that. And then also, as long as we have Chief McLean here, Holidays and Heroes 2 days ago on Sunday, that program was back as it had been pre-pandemic for the first time this year. And it is such an extraordinary, and Dan Ryan, Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, it is such an extraordinary program in its simplicity, but the generosity of the people who contribute, the funding to that, and the generosity of all of those first responders, everything to probation and parole, on their days off, often with their spouse or relative assisting, to spend the day with a young child, sometimes whose only interaction with the police perhaps hasn't been positive, or with law enforcement, but it is just such an incredible program that is so beyond the gifts that are given to those kids. And I just feel blessed to know so many of the people that are involved, and that they let me come and be a secret shopper for the kids. But it is extraordinary to witness. Chief, all of your folks just are so really dedicated to it. So it's another one of those reasons why I love where I live, because you make it very special. So thank you to the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue and Post Falls Police for leading the way on that all the years that it has been, almost 20 years, I believe. Has it been more than 20? A couple of decades, but it has always been Post Falls and Kootenai County Fire and Rescue that have been driving Santa's sleigh on that program. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We do need an executive session.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Last approximately how long?
10 minutes. So I would move to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061C to acquire an interest in real property which is not owned by a public agency, and that no action will be taken during the session, and that the session will last approximately 10 minutes.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Shove.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll enter executive.
Check everything's
Call the meeting back to order. Are there any motions to come forward?
to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.